When I had 2 years clean and sober, I had riding my mountain bike, and I crashed my mountain bike really, really hard, okay? My t-shirt got wrapped up in the front forks, hit the ground really, really hard, and this bone stuck out like that. Compound fracture, really bad day. I'm passing this around. So, first 90 seconds as I'm gathering my thoughts on the pavement, what do you think I began to think about? I got 2 years sober. Thank you. What was I thinking about?
You were thinking about, now you had a legitimate reason.
Oh my God, are you kidding me, right? I just hit the ground, I have a compound fracture, I have a license to get narcotics all day long. And my second thought process was, I'm not falling back into that trap again, right? So I went to Beaumont Hospital and they offered me all the pills I ever wanted in the entire world. Funny how when you get sober, you get all kinds of free drugs. When you're used, you can't find any at all, right? So here I am. And I said, no, I don't want anything, right? They gave me the propofol to knock me out. It's a Michael Jackson drug, that's not narcotic. And they reset my arm, okay? They made a mistake. And so they handed my wife Val a handful of Vicodins and go, here, these are for him. So we get to the house and Val goes, what do you want to do with these Vicodins? And I stared at him. I said, flush them down the toilet. Now, I don't know if any of you guys ever have been in pain before, a compound fracture pain. I've broken lots of bones, been lots of car accidents. This level of pain is the real deal 10, right? And to say no to the Vicodins and flush them down the toilet, and then wait 10 days for my shitty insurance company to approve me for surgery, that was really hard. And on some of those days, I vomited from the pain. I only took Motrin to get through that, and I prayed a lot. And I had a support system too. So after my surgery at Royal Beaumont Hospital, they wheeled me out of surgery. They say, what would you like? Oxycontin, Dilaudid, morphine sulfate. She had a syringe right in her hand. Guess what I said? I don't want any of it. She goes, well, sir, you just had surgery. You might go into shock. I go, well, what's the best place to go in a shock? A hospital, right? She goes, sir, we don't want this kind of liability. Just take a pill or something. Take some Oxycontin. I said, put that shit in your arm. That shit killed my friend. That was really hard. The reason why I say this is that sounds extreme to a lot of people, and that's fine. I'm not saying you should be like me, but I was inspired by other people that went through much worse. There was a woman named Rose who had full-blown cancer and full-blown AIDS, not HIV, full-blown AIDS. I saw her at NA meetings. When the meetings were over, she's wiping the tables down with cancer and full-blown AIDS. She goes into hospice, doesn't use any drugs until she's actually unconscious, and they give her morphine at that point. When she died, they put an infinity tag in her casket because she was sober forever. That was my inspiration. That was my spiritual badness. And I said to myself, when this arm was like this, I'm like, Rose, this ain't shit, is it? This ain't no cancer, this ain't no AIDS, come on. What kind of pain level is this, Rose? And I felt that presence, like she's laughing with me. Yeah, this is nothing, Raj. Just bang it around a little bit. It's no big deal. America is only 5% of the world's population, and we take and consume 99% of the world's Vicodin. You gotta begin to think about that. Who told you that Vicodin was your friend? Who told you that marijuana was your friend? Who told you that alcohol was your friend? Because I worked at Brighton Hospital for 3 years, and some of the most dedicated alcoholics that spent all their money on alcohol, when they needed treatment, how much money did Anheuser-Busch give them for their scholarship for inpatient treatment? How much money did Heineken give them for their inpatient treatment? Well, yes, 0. And the clients that were hooked on Oxycontin, how much money did Purdue Pharma give them for their treatment? Remember, you're their best customer. You dedicate your life to that pill and that drug. You gave them your hard-earned money. You follow what I'm saying? And so we got to begin to question, I'm not asking everyone to be this extreme, but see, the good thing about what I did, there's no confusion about my clean time. Is that helpful? So this ties back into overdoses. Right now, 2015 was the first year in American history where more people died from prescription drug overdoses than all illegal drugs combined. Is that startling? I'll say it one more time. 2015 was the first time in American history where across the nation, more people died from prescription drug overdoses than all illegal drugs combined. How'd that happen? Any theories?
I
I think that when the insurance companies changed the scoring for doctors to become providers for them, and all of a sudden your pain level became one of your indicators or whatever, that that was a way to get all those opiates into the system. I just think that once that happened, it just became write the script, right?
That was a huge part of it. Yes, right there?
I was just gonna say access.
Access, right?
Access to no.
So Purdue Pharma is notorious for what they did. Oxycontin was the pill they came out with. They went to federal court and they pled guilty, okay? The fine was like $1.2 billion. So they paid a fine of $1.2 billion. Here's what Purdue Pharma said. We lied to doctors, made false graphs, made false promises and allegations, and in some cases even told doctors this was non-addictive. Okay, this is how they actually do business. If you actually get a chance to Google this, standard operating procedure for big pharma is to lie, have the people out in the trenches. They also give out really big checks. So if you're bored, go to Dollars for Docs, okay, bring your doctor's name, and I'll become the number of who's giving him money from which company. Part of the new healthcare law, Dollars for Docs. So this is what happened. We had all of a sudden this priority of focusing on pain, this myth that these painkillers could be used successfully without any kind of addiction or harm. We began to saturate our communities with painkillers and told people, you should never be uncomfortable. That's the other myth. As Americans, we have too many drugs. You should never be uncomfortable. Your sniffles shouldn't bother you. Your aching arms shouldn't bother you. Your restless legs shouldn't bother you. We've got a pill for everything. And you as critical thinkers have to say, I'm not really sure that's the best way to go. I'm not really sure I want to be part of that. So tying this back into overdoses, what happened? Because we noticed, back in my era when I was overdosing, okay, that heroin was so shitty. It was 3.5 to 7% heroin. It was cut with muscle relaxers and barbiturates. It was low quality, low grade heroin, right? And so what happened? Why do we have all these overdoses? What began to happen even as early as 2009? Anybody recall what the difference was? What was the game changer with regards to overdose deaths due to heroin in particular? Fentanyl. It all comes back to fentanyl. There was a dealer that was responsible for over 200 deaths back in about 2009 to 2010, right? He was getting fentanyl from the cartel. So anybody know who El Chapo is? I really don't like him. Hopefully no one's in the cartel here. I really don't like El Chapo. Like a lot don't like him, okay? And for a lot of reasons. A lot of Mexican cartels would bring in heroin, okay? It's been done since the 60s and 70s. What he did differently was manufactured and brought in huge amounts of fentanyl because they couldn't make enough heroin for American demand. And the fentanyl, he found a way to make it really cheap with some really talented chemists. And also it's hard for the dogs to sniff it out. So we had all of this fentanyl coming into our community, right? And you can see what happened is that as the fentanyl comes in, the overdose deaths go through the roof. Now, America is divided up with heroin with regards to on east of the Mississippi and west, okay? On the west of the Mississippi, it's all black tar heroin. Their overdose rates are much lower. On the east of the Mississippi, we have the Colombian-based and Mexican-based heroin coupled with fentanyl, much higher overdose deaths. So 80% of people that die from a drug overdose have more than one drug in their system. You can die by taking one drug, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty hard to do. It almost always involves a combination of drugs. And so with fentanyl so available, and the biggest manufacturer and distributor of fentanyl in the US is the Sinaloa drug cartel. They're responsible for 80% of the fentanyl that comes to America. But who's responsible for most of the rest of it, though? China. You guys ever hear a thing called the dark net? Sounds evil, doesn't it? So I have many clients that went onto the dark net and began ordering all kinds of drugs. You can order whatever you want. You can even order a hitman on the dark net. Imagine being a 15-year-old kid with a magical box in your bedroom. And on this magical box, you just type in a few numbers and put some Bitcoins in there. You wait for FedEx to show up 3 days later, and you have heroin, fentanyl, Oxycontin, all drugs you ever dreamed of. Is that kind of tempting? Is that kind of hard to make that decision when no one's looking around to say, how bad is this? Remember back to access, right? A little bit too easy to access that stuff. So China is one of the biggest problems that we have with overdoses, because not only are they responsible for a large amount of fentanyl that comes into the US, but they're also responsible for what's called research drugs, research chemicals. You guys know what research chemicals are?
Yeah.
So why do people take research chemicals? Yep.
They're the same compounds as the heroin, fentanyl. It's non-detectable in drug screens, and you can get them online. They're delivered to your door, and they're a lot less cheap.
Exactly right. They're analogs. So they're drugs that mimic the effects of the original drug. So they mimic, there's Cartfentanyl, you must have heard about that. One little, basically, a crumb of that can kill somebody, right? So Cartfentanyl, different versions of fentanyl. They have MDMA, methadone, all these different modified chemicals. For LSD, they got 2CB. And so almost all these drugs come from China. Now, important question. How many people have gone to jail in China for sending fentanyl and research chemicals over to the US? 0. So why do I have a pet peeve with the Chinese government? The DEA has no presence in communist China. And so are the Chinese going to stop sending us fentanyl and research chemicals? Isn't that weird? And no one seems to really care about that. It always fascinates me. Like, you know who's bringing you the stuff that's killing your kids. Young man named Oliver from West Bloomfield died of smoking K2 and spice. I was harping about that way back before that was cool too, right? I said, hey everybody, marijuana can't kill you. The only way that marijuana can kill you is if 500 pounds falls on top of your head. But K2 and spice can kill you. Please listen to me. And most schools said what? I never heard of this stuff. If it's being sold at the local, gas station and the local, cigarette shop, it can't be that bad, right? Is that true? No. And remember the violence? Marijuana is not known to make people violent, just being honest. It's a stigma for the drug, right? But what about K2 and spice? Right? Imagine poor law enforcement. These kids are getting access to all these drugs that make them hyper-aggressive and hyper-manic. You're trying to go, man, what happened to the marijuana kids that we were dealing with? You know what I mean? This ain't cool, right? And so this young man smoked a whole bunch of K2 and spice and died. And it wasn't until his death that all of a sudden everyone began paying attention to this stuff. And where did those raw ingredients come from? China. And who went to jail for that? Nobody. And will that change? Not trying to be cynical or jaded, but no. So this is really important to understand that research chemicals play a major role in overdoses, okay? And the Sinaloa drug cartel is just absolutely horrible. They came to power with a whole bunch of dirty moves that they made. And so does anybody have an idea how many employees El Chapo has? According to the UN annual drug report, how many employees work for the Sinaloa drug cartel? You got to think about it. 100,000 people worldwide. Please say it's impressive. Please say that's impressive, right? And so do those people have relatives and cousins and aunts and uncles that work in law enforcement or maybe the Mexican National Police or other connections like that? And did he build a tunnel that went 1 mile under his jail cell, perfectly under his jail cell with a motor scooter to get out of there? And we're going to build a wall that stops that from coming in, right? Don't insult people in the cartel, right? And so here's the problem with that. The supply side cannot be stopped. The analysis of the Mexican country is that essentially Mexico is a narco state. The cartels basically run and own Mexico. If they wanted to topple the government, they could whatever they wanted to. There's so much money coming in and so much power. But back to the whole idea behind power. Where does all their power come from? It's not ideology. Remember, when you're dealing with ISIS, you're dealing with an ideology. So even a guy in ISIS with no money will still fight for ISIS. So all the guys that are fighting and killing for the Sinaloa drug cartel are doing that for what reason? Money. So if you want to stop the cartels, do you stop their drugs? Stop their money. And so HSBC Bank was found guilty of laundering money for the Sinaloa drug cartel. They had a teller in Tijuana that was dedicated to the cartel and their duffel bags. It went to court and we're very sorry about that. Went to federal court and they said, we want to plead guilty to laundering money for the Sinaloa drug cartel. And the prosecutor says, all you guys did? We did something else too that's kind of bad too. And they're like, what else did you do? We laundered money for Al-Qaeda, and we're really sorry about that too. And the US government said, you promise you won't do that again? We promise. And they said, well, here's the deal. No one can go to jail for this. Nobody at all, not even a perk block. The US government said that's absolutely fine, and we're gonna ask you to pay $2.3 billion to say you're sorry. And they did. Isn't that amazing? Will that ever happen again, you think? Their profits that year were $12 billion. The problem is the money and the supply side, right? We have to get people to not buy the drugs. The drugs are going to be available. There's too much power. So how people die ties back into the route of administration. So how you get a drug into your body is called your route of administration. So what are some ways a person can get a drug into their body? Anybody have an idea? Name a couple. Orally, taking a pill, swallowing, ingestion, right? What else? Sniffing, very common. What else? Intravenous, very, very common. What else? Transdermal, right? One of my friends was a person that got sober, and his friend broke into a woman's house. She was a cancer patient, and she passed away. And he found a box full of fentanyl patches. And so he took it upon himself to put 7 fentanyl patches on his body. And what happened a day later? Yeah, he looked really good though. You know, hadn't abused himself. There was no track marks, nothing, right? Nose was good, no damage to his septum. So transdermal can cause death, right? They even have fentanyl suppositories. I can't make this stuff up. They got fentanyl lollipops. You know that, right? Amazing. And now they came out with a new drug. I think it's the FDA approved it, the new candy amphetamine for the 5 and 7-year-olds for their ADHD medication. Right? That's a great idea, right? Nothing's going to go wrong with that. So which route of administration is the most dangerous? What is most likely to cause a person to die? The injection. It's the most unforgiving. Once you put a drug into your bloodstream, your body can't do much about it. You know, so my biggest fear when I help people are my IV drug users. They have the highest death rates, right? Now, sniffing can cause death as well, don't get me wrong. And so can smoking a drug, like smoking crack, you can cause a heart attack and you can die. But almost all deaths that we see now are heroin deaths, and they involve injection, right? That's a very important concept. And so how you take a drug into your body can cause how, you know, lethality can increase. Let me ask you an important question too. Are there certain combinations of drugs that are very lethal? Like what should you not do if you're trying to not die? Exactly. Don't want to combine depressants, don't want to combine stimulants, right? So when a person takes a bunch of muscle relaxers and some heroin, that's a really, really bad idea. Benzos, Xanax and heroin, really, really bad idea, right? Heroin and alcohol, really, really bad idea. But many people that use drugs nowadays don't just use one single drug, right? Anybody ever been working with someone who's an addict? How many of them are pure alcohol? No other drug at all. How many of them are pure cannabis? No other drug at all. How many are pure Xanax? You know what I'm saying? Back in my era, the world was very different. If you wanted to buy drugs, there was a guy that sold heroin. That was his exclusive skill set, selling heroin. There was a Chaldean guy that was selling the cocaine. There was this guy from Grateful Dead that sold the marijuana and the acid. Okay? It was a very, very, you know, mom and pop type shop thing, right? Then they began to realize, you know what? Walmart's really successful. And why is Walmart really successful? One of the reasons. Everything under one roof. And so these guys go, this is really stupid to only sell cocaine here. I can sell cocaine, heroin, and pills. And so almost all drug dealers now sell multiple drugs. And why is that bad for overdoses though? We care about people that don't, we're trying to avoid people dying from overdoses. Why is this one-stop shopping model really bad? And they combine it together because it's so easy to get. Once again, accessibility, right? And it's so easy to overdose and die. Let me ask you another question. What else causes death? We know that a person can die from abusing drugs and alcohol, right? But you guys are aware of the counterfeit drugs that are floating around right now? So Oxycontin, back the OCs, those are $80 a pill. Each pill was $80, right? And so what did the Sinaloa drug cartel begin to think about with regards to making money? Let's make counterfeit Oxycontin pills. And they began making them. And what they use as their ingredient? Fentanyl. And what happened to a lot of people? One of my close friends from high school, her son went to a rave. And he wanted to try Oxycontin for the first time. His friends got it for him. He felt it was the right thing. He went even online to confirm it. And then he snorted it. And he died that night. The first time he ever tried an opioid, he died. You see how heartless that is? They're making pills right now that are counterfeit, so you don't know what you're getting. And so you think you're getting an Oxycontin. Right now, what's the other biggest counterfeit that's out there? Xanax. The cartels are making counterfeit Xanax. When a guy gets caught with 20,000 Xanax bars, believe you, he didn't get it from a pharmacy. No, it didn't happen that way. There's not that many crooked doctors that can see at one time, right? So back to the cartels, they play a major role in all these drugs. And now we have counterfeit drugs that are killing people. So we have counterfeit drugs, we have mixing drugs, we have research chemicals, and we have the route of administration. So has anybody heard people talking about these Narcan parties? Don't exist. Anybody ever been shot full of Narcan? My only person up here has been shot full of Narcan? Oh, it's humbling. So let me tell you how that feels. You will never go to a Narcan party because no one wants to ever have this stuck in their body, even when they're using, okay? This is instant heart attack. It's like having somebody taser you, okay, dehydrate you, and punch you in the face. If you like that, I recommend using narcotics and having a shot of this, okay? This is instant dysphoria, the opposite of euphoria, okay? So this is kind of stuff that gets misleading. We see on social media, all these Narcan parties so that Raj and Jeannie shouldn't give out Narcan because they're gonna have a Narcan party. No, that's not gonna happen. What's gonna happen is Raj and Jeannie are gonna give out Narcan and we're gonna save lives. And so a lot of trolling happens on the internet, okay? The same guys that say addiction is not a disease says that they're having Narcan parties, okay? That's not happening at all. I just wanted to cover that, make that very clear. I wanted to also talk about, how overdoses happen. About half of them occur when people are alone, and the other half occur when people are not alone. And so what about this whole idea behind, and Jeannie, bless her heart, has been fighting for this for a long time. What about Good Samaritan laws? Why are these very, very important with regards to saving lives? Remember, we're here because we want to prevent overdoses, right? And so what's important about these Good Samaritan laws with regards to saving lives?
Protection.
Yeah, protect the person calling 911. If you're an addict and you're with an addict and they're dying, you're out of there, okay, the cops are going to get you and they're going to take my dog.
Yeah, right. And, they tried, in Texas, it's really notorious for this. They wanted to pass a law that provides some kind of Good Samaritan law. And almost all people in power in Texas says, absolutely not. We're giving the wrong message. We're saying that you can use drugs with no consequences. Well, that sounds pretty in theory until there's nobody left. And so I can tell you, my ears to the streets, so many people have overdosed and their friends have abandoned them at the dope house, by the dumpster, in the car. And it didn't have to happen. And the only reason why they do that is to avoid going to jail and avoid getting a felony on their record. We had the same problem with alcohol. Governor Snyder signed a law way back in the day. They said all these college students were dying because when you called for help for your friend and they drank too much alcohol, they give you an MIP and your friend got an MIP too. My one client, he brought his girlfriend to U of M hospital on his shoulders from an alcohol overdose. They're getting her help. The cops showed up and gave them both MIPs. This is before the law was passed, right? And so people were dying because of that, because they were dissuaded from getting help. And we still had a problem today with regards to, especially with heroin. People are terrified to call for help for their friends. And so, we got to realize as a society, are we willing to put that, into practice? And what's the message? Is the message of giving a person a second chance? So that's very important.